Ever since its founding, Hezbollah has cultivated a myth of invincibility. For decades, they've been seen as an unbreakable force, a David against the Goliath of regional powers. But what if I told you this myth has been shattered? Not just by bombs and bullets, but by something far more subtle, a concept straight out of economics and mathematics, game theory. Today, we're going to unravel how a decades-long standoff was broken, leading to what many are calling the strategic defeat of Hezbollah. We'll explore the calculated risks, the fatal miscalculations, and the new reality on Israel's northern border. This is the story of how the so-called invincible force and its mystic leader of the Levant was outplayed. So, what exactly is game theory? And what does it have to do with military strategy? In simple terms, game theory is the study of strategic decision-making. It analyzes how rational players interact and make choices when the outcome of their decision depends on the choices of others. In a military context, think of it as a high-stakes chess match between two nations. One of the most famous concepts in game theory is the Nash Equilibrium, named after the brilliant mathematician John Nash. A Nash equilibrium is a situation where no player can benefit by unilaterally changing their strategy, as long as the other player's strategies remain unchanged. In the context of Israel and Hezbollah, for years, they were locked in a perfect Nash equilibrium. This was a state of mutual deterrence. Hezbollah knew that a full-scale attack on Israel would bring about a devastating response, potentially destroying Lebanon. Israel, on the other hand, knew that a preemptive war against Hezbollah would be incredibly costly in terms of lives, resources, and international standing. Both sides understood the price of all-out war was too high. This equilibrium was maintained through a strategy called tit-for-tat. It's a simple but effective principle. If Hezbollah launched a minor attack, Israel would respond with a proportional or slightly stronger strike. If Israel targeted a Hezbollah asset, they could expect a retaliatory strike. This created a predictable, albeit tense, rhythm of conflict. Each side knew the rules of the game. They could poke and prod, but they couldn't cross the red line that would trigger a full-scale war. This delicate balance kept a fragile peace for years, with both sides carefully calculating their moves to avoid catastrophic escalation. This was the game, and both sides were playing it masterfully, locked in a dance of deterrence that defined the security of the entire region. The game was stable because the cost of breaking the rules was understood by both players to be unacceptable. At the center of this intricate game was one man, Hassan Nasrallah. For over 30 years, he has been the Secretary General of Hezbollah, its public face, and its master strategist. Nasrallah meticulously crafted an image of himself as an untouchable, almost mythical leader. He became known as the Syed of the Resistance, a charismatic figure who could rally his followers with fiery speeches and defiant rhetoric. He cultivated a persona of an invisible mastermind, rarely seen in public, operating from the shadows, always one step ahead of his enemies. This mystique was crucial to Hezbollah's brand. It projected an aura of invincibility. The narrative was simple. Hezbollah, under Nasrallah's brilliant leadership, could not be defeated. They had stood up to Israel in 2006 and claimed victory, solidifying this image in the minds of their supporters and many across the Arab world. This branding wasn't just for show. It was a core part of their psychological warfare. It was designed to deter their enemies and inspire their allies. Nasrallah wasn't just a military commander. He was a symbol of resistance. A living legend whose strategic genius was considered unquestionable. The myth of Nasrallah and the myth of Hezbollah were one and the same. And then, on October 8th, 2023, the master strategist made a fatal miscalculation. The day after Hamas launched its brutal attack on southern Israel, Nasrallah made a fateful decision. He declared the opening of a support front for Hamas along Lebanon's southern border. From a strategic perspective, this was a monumental blunder. In the language of game theory, Nasrallah unilaterally changed his strategy. He broke the Nash Equilibrium. For years, the unwritten rule was that the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah was its own separate game. By linking his front to the war in Gaza, Nasrallah fundamentally changed the rules. He abandoned the predictable tit-for-tat model that had kept Lebanon relatively safe. He was no longer playing the same game. Why did he do it? Perhaps it was hubris, a belief in his own invincibility. Perhaps it was pressure from his patrons in Iran, or a feeling of obligation to the so-called axis of resistance. Whatever the reason, it was a strategic error of historic proportions. He bet that Israel, already engaged in a massive war in Gaza, would be too distracted or too weak to respond forcefully in the north. He was wrong. Israel's response was not what Nasrallah had anticipated. Instead of the usual proportional tit-for-tat strikes, the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, initiated a new strategy. They saw Nasrallah's move not as a limited provocation, but as a fundamental breach of the long-standing rules of engagement. The game had changed, and so did Israel's playbook. IDF struck back with a devastating pager attack that killed and maimed hundreds of Hezbollah members. The response? Nasrallah made a fiery speech, but his words were not matched with force, a bark without bite. It was just the beginning of a long game. The IDF began a systematic and relentless campaign to dismantle Hezbollah's military capabilities near the border. This wasn't just about retaliation. It was about fundamentally altering the security reality in the north. They didn't just strike missile launchers after they were fired. They proactively targeted Hezbollah's command and control centers, weapons depots, and elite Radwan forces. Senior commanders were eliminated one by one, disrupting Hezbollah's leadership chain. While the IDF kept upping the ante, climbing the escalation ladder, Hezbollah was either unable or reluctant to match the level of force. More importantly, the IDF's objective became clear: to push Hezbollah's forces back, away from the border, beyond the Litani River. This was a geographical line established by UN Security Council Resolution 1701 after the 2006 war. A line Hezbollah had ignored for years. Now, Israel was determined to enforce it with overwhelming force. The goal was no longer just deterrence. It was the physical removal of the immediate threat and to deal the biggest blow to the chain of command and the entire leadership of Hezbollah. IDF, seeing the weakness of its enemy, assessing its own risks, hedged the odds and went for the final kill, a classic maneuver of game theory at its finest. The result has been a profound transformation on the ground. The once feared Hezbollah is now in a state of what can only be described as a humiliating exile. Within its own country, entirety of its senior leaders has been eliminated. Their deaths cannot be avenged. Their legacy has disappeared. His forces have been pushed back from the border. Their infrastructure in the south lies in ruins, and his senior leadership has been decimated. The once bustling villages of southern Lebanon, which served as Hezbollah's military strongholds, are now ghost towns. Tens of thousands of Lebanese civilians have been displaced, a direct consequence of Nasrallah's decision to tie their fate to Hamas. The asymmetric warfare advantage Hezbollah once held has been nullified. They are forced into a fragile silence, unable to operate freely near the border as they once did. The myth of invincibility has been shattered. Nasrallah, the invisible mastermind, is now gone forever because of the consequences of his own strategic failure. He gambled and lost, not just a military battle, but the very foundation of his power, his reputation as an undefeatable strategist. The organization he fathered, the core of the axis of resistance, and finally his own life. The game changed, and he failed to adapt. The side of the resistance was annihilated while Hezbollah has been caged, not by steel bars, but by the cold, hard logic of a game he thought he had mastered. A lesson for all the non-state actors challenging the legitimate states. And as always, this is your host Donica DeQuella signing off. If you found this analysis insightful, please join my channel, Silk and Steel, for more deep dives into strategy, geopolitics, and the forces that shape our world. For those who want to explore this topic in greater detail, the full in-depth article is available on my blog. You can find the link in the comments below. Stay curious, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next video.